Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for 40k from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 109. It's another 40k show, all about the Adeptus Sororitas. And this is all because Mark Zielinski wants our feedback on them, and Darren and I happen to be playing games with them. So we think we can give, even though it's early, we think we can give a decent opinion on it. We also are doing our big 40k starter set giveaway. We had lots of entries for that, so that'll be coming up in a few seconds, and we'll be answering your guys' questions. We basically put the call out to Twitter and Facebook, and we got a whole bunch of questions, and we'll try to answer them. So as usual, I am your host. I'm Chris at CanHammer Chris on Twitter, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr.
Darren. I'm running CanHammer_YT on Instagram.
For those of you tuning in for the very first time, this is our weekly/bi-weekly, depends on how much time and content we have coming out. Kind of radio talk show where we talk about Age of Sigmar 40k, we get guests on. We try to cover a variety of topics from competitive play to hobby topics to, army list reviews. So they are a variety. We also do Age of Sigmar shows, and we always put the tag in the title, so if we're doing a show that's, you'll know what game the show's for. That way if people aren't interested, they don't have to listen through something. They can just, skip over it to the next one or go back, things like that. So if you want more information about us, we also run a YouTube channel. It's all at canhammer.ca. So all of our events, everything you need to know is at canhammer.ca. So we're going to start off. We have a few shout-outs we want to give. I want to give a shout-out to GarageHammer. They've been doing some good Age of Sigmar content as of late. And I just think you guys should go over there and check them out. I'm sure people that are with the new 40k are interested in some crossover because both games are fairly similar. So if you play an Age of Sigmar event, it's not like you're that, like it is different, distinctly different, but you're not that far out of the way, right? So from 40k, so it's good practice. But now I'm going to turn it over to Darren, as we had two giveaways that he was kind of handling. So why don't you go through the giveaways?
All right, so we have had two giveaways. One was started maybe about a month ago, well before actually that they actually announced when 8th was going to be released. And this was the small competition I had running about how many wounds the mastodon would have in 8th edition. And this was before any of the big models were announced. So Knights had not been leaked yet. We knew that Marines had one and that Terminators had 2. That was all the information we had to go on. So the question was, how many wounds will a mastodon have in 8th?
Now, what are they going to win? I'm curious. What are they winning?
Yeah, so as stated, the winner is going to win a CanHammer t-shirt. And we have
polo shirt.
A polo shirt, yeah. So nice quality cotton polo shirt that are currently in the making. So they're going to be fresh off the whatever makes shirts, looms.
Yeah, so it's a black CanHammer polo. It'll have the CanHammer logo on the left kind of breast area. And then we will actually get your name embroidered underneath their logo in white. So you'll be just like us, and you'll have a matching shirt with the rest of the team. You'll be special.
Yeah, because none of the other shirts that we produce will be monikered, just the ones that we have. So it'll be a special shirt.
Well, I'm gonna say that's a point of contention between you and I. I would like to just offer that, but we'll see.
Yeah, so after the winner, get in touch with the winner. I'll make sure I get their shirt size, and we'll put that in, and it'll be ready when all the other shirts are ready. So that's exciting. So there were about 150 entries, which is amazing, and it ranged everywhere from. So you had to get closest without going over, like Price is Right. So that ranged from $1, so one wound. To I think the highest was 65, which is a lot. Yeah, which is a lot. So the first thing we got leaked, I think, was a Knight had 24, and then a Stompa had it's got 40, right? Mm-hmm. So then it probably falling somewhere in between then, but by then a lot of people are putting their guesses already. So in the end, the Mastodon has 30 wounds. And so out of all the people that entered, only 5 people got 30 wounds on the dot. And so I'm just going to randomize between 1 and 5. Awesome. And the winner is, drum roll, It's Ryan Pippy.
Oh my gosh.
He's a patron.
He is a patron. Yeah, we know Ryan. Oh,
yeah.
What are the odds?
Does he get a shirt already for being a patron? If he does, then we have a secondary prize.
Yeah, we'll have to work that out if he already gets a shirt. Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
The secondary prize is the Forge World Index with the Mastodon in it. So the Space Marines Index, Imperial Armor Index. I'll order that and get it shipped right to your door. That's the secondary prize. So, but because I think maybe our patrons get shirts already. But anyway, we'll figure that out. But yes, congratulations to Ryan Pippy on guessing 30 wounds for the Mastodon.
So it depends what level of patron he is. If he's not the level that gets the shirt, we'll just mail him a shirt.
Yep. Cool. All right, so I'll reach out to Ryan in the next few days.
So now on to the big giveaway, the $190 Canadian box.
That's right. So the final giveaway we had started 2 weeks before 8th was released. So when they announced the release date, basically, when pre-orders went up. And it's been running for the last 2 weeks, and it finished at 8 a.m. on the day of release, June 17th. And for this competition, all you had to do was comment on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram as something that you were looking forward to in 8th edition. And we had 1,016 separate, hopefully non-duplicated entries, which blows my mind.
That's a lot.
Blows my mind. So thank you, everybody, for taking part. The comment sections for those things just went off the hook. Like, it was crazy. So just to be above board at what I've done is I closed the competition as of 8 a.m. June 17th. So if you did comment on those things afterwards, I'm sorry, but I didn't include your comments in the competition, but they're still on the videos and stuff. And then I personally went through every single comment and removed duplicates, because some people were quite excited and commented in duplicate sections when I could tell that it was the same person. So same name or same icon or that sort of thing. If I wasn't sure, I left them all in just to be safe. And then, of course, the other part of it was that our patrons get automatically 5 entries automatically into the draw. So they were put in even if they didn't comment or anything on those entries. And then I put them all into it, and I manually typed them all into an Excel spreadsheet, which I have in front of me, from number 1 all the way to 1,016. That kind of wrecked my hands for a day or two.
So let's just hope it's not Ryan again. Let's just hope.
And so what I'm going to do now is just randomize from 1 to 1,016 and see who we get.
I'm so excited.
Here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to press it. Ready? Drum roll.
Oh.
Drum roll. All right, and the winner is 945.
Who's lucky 945? Ooh,
Number
calling 945.
45. That is somebody called Rogue Mind. I just found him on our long list of YouTube comments, and his comment, interesting, was, I don't play 40K yet, but this will definitely get me into it. Which is great. So we literally just gave a starter set to somebody and introduced a new person to the game. So I think that's awesome. Whoever's Rogue Mind on YouTube,
be
contacting you because you've just won a Dark Imperium starter set shipped to your door. So congratulations. And thank you, everybody, for taking part and helping us make this 8th release quite the amazing event, I have to say. The hype has been crazy. Our support levels have gone crazy the last 2 weeks. And so thank you very much for joining us on this.
Yep. The full fanboyism was in effect, and the full rantism was in effect, and it is what it is, and we're having a great time. Okay, So we'll move on to new releases and news. So there's not a lot, of course, because it's all we've covered a lot of it. It all came out. 8th edition is here. All the indexes are out. We've gone over all that stuff before. Some of the big stuff that we didn't really know about was Forge World Books. The Astra Militarum book came out. So what's in that book, Darren?
They just leaked a couple of things from that Astra Militarum book. That one, of course, is where a lot of things that people thought had disappeared. So like quad mortars, renegades are in there. A lot of those things that people thought somehow had disappeared.
I hope Vendettas are in there, man, because I have the Forge World upgrade kits for my Valkyries, and I'm just really hoping that they're in there. But I don't know if they even sell those anymore. But
I think they do. I think they will. Yeah, so this book includes... so they kind of leaked two things like they normally do from each book. So they leaked the Malkador, which, if you don't know what the Malkador is basically like a crazy souped up version of the Militarum, the Hellhound. Is that the one with the flamers on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Malkador is like this big kind of super heavy like flamer tank basically. It's pretty cool. It's got 18 wounds. It's Titanic, and it has this Inferno gun, which is basically a flamer weapon, and you can pick the fuel. So you can pick chemical fuel or flammable fuel. And the chemical fuel, they're both 16-inch flamer weapons, which is
long,
sweet.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So they all auto hit targets because they're flamers. They're both heavy 2d6. The chemical fuel is automatically wounds on a 2+, regardless of toughness, unless it's a vehicle, and then it wounds on a 6+. So it's a chaff killer. It kills anything that's not a vehicle, no matter, regardless of toughness. -3 AP, 1 damage. And then the flammable fuel is strength 7 -2, 2 damage apiece, which is decent. So if you're doing heavy 2d6, so what, like 7 or 8 hits, strength 7, so that's 4s on a rhino, -2, saving on 5s, and then, say 3 or 4 of those go through, that's 8 to 10 wounds in one shot. So it's decent. It can also take, of course, heavy bolters. It can take more heavy flamers, and it can take las cannons. They haven't told us how many.
A lot of points, though. Yeah,
I'm assuming it's a lot. Yeah, so it's toughness 8, 18 wounds, 3+ save. So it's not super hard to kill. It's a little bit, probably slightly easier to kill than a Lion Raider. It's only 16 power, so that kind of gives you an idea of where that falls. But pretty cool. And then the other thing they leaked, of course, was Death Corps, the Death Rider Squadron. Yeah, so these guys are sort of fast attack Death Corps guys. They move 10, which is pretty fast. And you get 5 guys in a unit. And they have this las pistols, but they also have the Death Corps Hunting Lance. So these guys are toughness 4, 2 wounds apiece with 4+ saves. And this Death Corps Hunting Lance is a melee weapon that's strength +2, so strength 6 -2, D3 damage, but you can only use it on the turn that you charge. So after that turn, you're kind of screwed.
So that surprises me that they would bring that out when there's already Rough Riders in the Astra Militarum Codex. So I don't know why Forge World, for like a consistency, wouldn't just say these are Rough Riders, because they're basically the same model.
Mm-hmm.
Like. So I pardon me, unless it's like completely identical, I don't think it is. I thought it was slightly different, because they don't scout, right? The Krieg ones, they don't get to come on from a board edge.
It doesn't say that. No.
Yeah, so that's part of me is like maybe they're cheaper and you could spam them, but I kind of wish that Forge World, where possible, like for me, if it's just a Death Corps of Craig, like infantry squad, they should just be regular Astra, like just for consistency with the game. That's all. That was the one thing that kind of bothered me about that. And I was like, well, they have Rough Riders, just say they're Rough Riders.
So kind of like
cool Rough Rider models.
So like all cavalry now, like the Thunderwolves, the horses or whatever you're riding also get to attack. They're just strength 4, 1 damage attacks, and there's a bunch of things they can work your options that we don't know because we don't have those lists. They have a rule called Cult of Sacrifice, which again we're not sure what that is at this time, and it has the rider actually has a 5+ ward save from strength 4 or less attacks, which is decent, and it doesn't suffer any penalty when charging through terrains if you're using those terrain rules. Yeah, so that's the Death Corps Riders, and those are the two kind of we got spoiled. Something else actually just came out today. A Imperial armor unit focus on the Hellforged Chaos Predator.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this would be interesting to compare to a normal Predator. Oh, for some reason, can't read the stats. So it's T7, 11 wounds, 3+ save like a normal Predator. Ballistic skill, weapon skill, all that stuff is the same as a Predator. Comes with a Plasma Destroyer and an Infernal Flamestorm Cannon, which sounds pretty good. I'll take it just because of what it sounds.
Anything with the word flame in it in this edition seems to be pretty good. Yeah. It's not like a standard flamer.
And then you put storm after it, and it must be good. So this is 8-inch.
That's a range increase.
Yeah. But this one's only 8-inch.
So no range increase.
But it's heavy 2d6. It's strength 5 -1, 2 damage each.
Oh, that's really good. That's nice.
Yeah. You can switch the Plasma Destroyer for any one of the other. Yeah, so actually it comes with the Plasma Destroyer, and then you can switch it for a whole bunch of different options, and then add on las cannons or flamers on the side.
But really, in 8th edition, it doesn't matter what things come with, because some things, like the Whirlwind, comes with a missile launcher that's more expensive than like the other one that's maybe not as good, but it's just kind of like, it doesn't actually matter what it comes with unless you're playing, what's it called there?
Yeah.
The what's it called? Battle points or not? Oh my god!
Power level.
Power levels.
Yeah.
Oh, stupid me! But
so this thing comes with a Plasma Destroyer, which is 36-inch heavy 2d3 plasma, basically, with 2 damage instead of 1 damage. And then you can swap that out for that Flamestorm Cannon. You can swap it out for a Magna Melta Cannon, 24-inch heavy D3 Melta, except strength 10 instead of strength 8, or a Sea Beam Cannon, which is 72 inches. 1 shot, heavy 1, strength 6, -3, D3 damage. It says you cannot fire it if the model moved.
Oh.
And for every 24 inches between the bearer and the target, increase the strength by +2 and the damage by D3. Oh. So if you're at 48-inch, that becomes strength 10, 3d3 damage.
Yeah, so Magnus no longer goes in the back corner. He goes right the front line.
He drops right in front of you. And then it says if the model...
We can't drop, so that's too bad.
And if you kill somebody with this weapon, that unit suffers 2d6 additional hits at strength 6, 1 damage. So it's like a splash effect, I guess.
So it's pretty crazy. Wow, so Forge World is doing what they always do, crazy rules that aren't standard, but you love it, I don't.
So
that's
you sit this in like the very back corner and you just plink away at the farthest target possible and it just deletes. It goes to like strength 14, 4d3 damage.
Awesome. So I guess I got 2 points of news that I want to talk about. One good, one bad, because I get accused of being a fanboy every once in a while. So I got something bad on there. Basically, I went into Sequence of Comics to play in an Age of Sigmar tournament last weekend. It was a great time. I won't get into it on this show. And they had these How to Play Warhammer 40,000 updates for Dark Vengeance. And I was like super impressed. It's just a small little full color, like glossy magazine style book. And it has the core rules in it, minus, of course, like the scenarios and a few other crazy things. But it has basically most of the standard rules. And then it also has updated rules for all of the units that are in the Dark Vengeance, including, like, the characters, the named characters. Now, they're very bland, I guess you could say. Like, you could have just used the rules from the indexes. But I think that this was great, just having a free giveaway. Oh, you have the old starter set? Bang, now you can play it. So if there was kids or something that bought the starter set 4 or 5 months ago, now they have it. I took a copy because I wanted a reference for the rules and kind of just talk about it, but it was just a really nice touch. I know some people criticize that it was, that's just bland rules. They could have wrote more custom rules for the special characters and things, but to me, it's good enough, and it's pretty solid for free, and all retailers got one. And another cool thing is actually those big Space Marine cutouts, they were free as well, whereas I guess apparently the last time GW did that, they were like $200 or $100 for them to buy. But so that's kind of good too, that they're giving away a lot more stuff that makes it more interesting. It makes it cooler. It makes you feel like just better about it.
You mean like the big cutout I took a picture in front of at Multizone?
Yeah.
You could buy that? You can get one for free?
Well, no, they gave them to the stores for free. Whereas, like, last time they did a promotion like that, from the information I got, the stores had to buy it.
Okay.
If they wanted it in their store.
Okay.
I just thought that was a cool shift. And then the next point is I actually ordered the new tactical template for Warhammer 40K, and it's actually garbage.
The gauge.
And I hate to say that. It's a really soft rubber, so it flexes. And there's a lot of flashing on it, and it's rubber flashing. And the Chaos side actually really doesn't look good at all.
Yeah.
Chaos side looks really terrible.
It looks like somebody kind of like barfed on it.
Yeah. And so the biggest problem I have with it is it's flexible. And then the second problem is this is a measuring device. And so measuring devices have to be accurate, and they have to be, like, usable. And to me, this is not accurate. There's, like, rubber flashing. It bends. It warps. It's just not... I wouldn't want to play with it. And I wouldn't want, actually, my opponent to use it. Because, like, I have an Age of Sigmar attack template, and it's much better. It's solid. It was way more money, the brass one, but I have, like, a clear cutout. Way more functional than like, a piece of rubber. Now, the good part of this one is, I guess, maybe it won't scratch and it won't break, but it's unusable. Yeah. I think, like, it's literally unusable.
And the edges were, like, kind of rounded. So, like, if you're gonna measure 1 inch and not 1.1 inch, it's like got this kind of rounded edge, and then it's like, well, where's the edge then? And like, you measured it, right? And it's not in a game of inches and semi-inches. Yeah,
the tech in me, no, it's not accurate enough. It's just not good enough. So, don't buy it. If you really want to, do whatever the hell you want, but I'd say don't buy it. But all the other stuff's really good. I bought everything. The command dice are awesome. The new, so I wasn't a fan of the GW wound dice, just because I didn't like the colors. But the new ones with the black and blue and the black and red are right up my alley in color. I know it's an aesthetic thing. So, and the command dice are valuable as hell, because there's, like, tokens in there for, okay, these guys advanced, these guys retreated. And so if you're playing at a tournament, I think I bought 2 sets, because when I go to the ETC, I want to be able to be like, oh, your Rhino there retreated. I'm going to put a die on it that says retreat. And I'm going to be very proactive with counters, because, when you're playing in a tournament, it gets kind of stressful and people do hit that. So I bought 2 sets, and I definitely don't regret it at all. And another thing, too, is people are constantly asking how many command points you have left, how many blah, blah, blah. And if you're using the same dice and you pick them up, the difference between I know we argued about this in the last podcast, but the difference between having 1 and 2 command points is crucial. Mm-hmm. Like, when you have to make a leadership test, you're like, I'm going to auto pass that. That could win you the game. Whereas, so I say get tokens, or make your own, actually, you could probably make your own that are more functional and better, but I'm just not that kind of person.
Yeah, no, I like those the counting of the command points with the dice. I think is good. There's a lot of them, so you could buy just 1 tube, and that could serve many different people, because each one goes up to 6. So I don't know how many command points you're going to be rocking in one army, but you really only need 2 of those dice per army. And then my only issue with so I have some of the AOS wound counters, and then I had a look at the 40K ones that you got. The only problem on the 40K ones, to tell the difference between 6 and 9, it's like a tiny little vertical hash, whereas
horizontal.
No, it just kind of goes across the horizontal bit. All the numbers have horizontal bits, and then to tell which is 6 or 9 is just a little vertical hash, whereas on the AOS ones it's like a big solid line that says this is 6 or 9.
Oh, yes.
So it's a little bit easier to read 6 or 9 on the AOS ones. But yeah, I do like the colors. Yeah, and you got some exclusive color, didn't you? That is not on the website or something somehow.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing. Is like when you pre-ordered them, they only showed the blue and black on the website, and I like the red and black. So enough on that. We're gonna move on to some hobby. So you've been working on any hobby lately?
Yeah, I've basically been painting Ulrich, which I started last week. I think I mentioned it on the website, but he's basically done, except I'm still debating whether to try wet blending or not on the cape. I'm a bit chicken. But otherwise, I think he's probably the best model I've ever painted, I got to say. Inspiring model to paint, like when you start painting it, you're like, shit, I got to do this craft or some justice, because there's some crazy detail on this thing.
He is a very nice model.
Yeah.
And his pose is very intimidating with the upside down axe. Like he's basically asking you to pick a fight with him, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
I've been converted up a couple of Wolfguard battle leaders from my Wolfen list, and I've ordered a bunch of multiple assassins. and yeah, and I ordered a Deathwing side to complete my Dark Angels collection. I've ordered a Deathwing side. I was just going to steal Chris's, but his are really old. So.
Hey, I don't know. I'm actually like you. You make fun of the Stormbolters. I made a list with 3 Stormbolter Deathwing units, and it does a lot of damage with Belial.
Yeah,
like that's a lot of shot. 4 shots a guy at 12 inches. I go anywhere on the board, rerolling to hit. Yeah, there's no rend, which is like really unfortunate because rend and damage are worth their weight in gold in this, especially the rend.
Yeah.
With the way cover is, like, oh man, broadsides in terrain, like, geez, 1-up save. Yeah, you need a couple rend, 2 rend, or something like that.
I picked up a bunch of Necrons for super cheap. Basically an army of Necrons for like $200. So, and most of them are painted. So I just got to fill in a few characters and that army's ready to go. So you'll see that on the channel in the next, hopefully 4 to 6 weeks. And then, our old friend Nick, who you haven't heard from in a while because he's been training to defend the country, he actually wanted to apparently start an orc army, and he's ended up bought me a whole bunch of Killicans and orc vehicles to paint for him. So you'll definitely be seeing that over the next number of months. Army that I'm going to paint up for him so that he can play and I can play in the meantime. So that's pretty cool. That'll be keeping me busy for a while.
Mm-hmm. So I finished. I've been really busy when it comes to hobby. A little bit of like squirrel. I've been buying as much as Darren, but I've been a little bit like squirreling it and doing a lot of projects. But so I paint up a basilisk to make 3 in my Astra Militarum list because they're not. I'm tempted. Like I don't want to say like they're fantastic. They're like an upper middle tier choice, I would say. Like they're good. You could replace them with lots of other stuff, but they just do a lot of damage. So I wanted to finish my 3rd one. So we talked about the sandbag conversion. Well, I finally got it fully painted. 3 of them. I bought. It's funny. I actually ordered 9 Ogrins, and I built and spray primed them for our test weekend that we had last weekend. And that took actually quite. It didn't take a long time to build them, but like it's 9 guys. And so I got those guys ready for some paint, and I'm really glad I got them because they're a standout choice in the Astra Militarum list. It's something that can advance at the enemy to distract them. It's something that can hold your line. So I thought it was really worthwhile. I have 7 or 8 of the old Ogrins fully painted, so maybe I could actually do an Ogrin force, but who knows. And then I've also been working on my demons. I know. So I've assembled, which are one piece. 15 brimstones, and I have 7 pinks I'm building, and I have a bunch of resin bases to paint to put my pinks up on 32s. Because in this game, the chaff matters so much, and now that pinks come on 32s, it's actually worth it to upgrade, because now they have more of a presence on the board. It actually matters in game, because the amount of bubble wrapping you have to do, that extra little bit in their base makes a huge difference. So it's pretty substantial. So that's it for me for hobby. So we'll go on to Event Spotlight. We have Capital City Bloodbath coming up, which is our big gaming convention at the EY Center in Ottawa, Ontario in August. So you can check that out by going to capitalcitybloodbath.com, or you can go to canhammer.ca and click on the Capital City Bloodbath link.
Yep. It's going to be off the hook this year.
Oh, it's going to be hopefully a lot larger than last year, and it should be really good. And we're doing lunches provided, so if you sign up to an event, you get lunch included, and it's going to be a nice barbecue.
Yeah, and just 2 months into 8th, like who knows, everything goes, I think.
Yeah, like the meta won't be as developed, so it'll be a really good time to play. And Logan's been on top of the FAQ and clear clarifications in the pack, so anything that comes up or any rules discrepancies or anything like that, he's going to fix, and it should be pretty good. So we're going to move on to the main topic of the show. We're going to talk about the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, the Adeptus Sororitas, it's kind of weird. With the keywords, they're essentially their own faction, but they're also not. So they're their own faction in that they have basically orders, where it's like the Imperial Guard regiments or Space Marine legions, or chapters, I should say, where you can say, okay, these guys are the Order of the Rose, or things like that. And then, of course, your abilities only affect them. Now, since there's no real special characters for any of these, order really doesn't matter. You can just name it whatever you want. Yep. Now, because of this, the sisters are they're basically under the Adeptus Ministorum, whereas if you know the fluff, that's kind of where they're located under. Now, the Adeptus Ministorum is a little bit of a larger list with a lot of kind of, it's not as defined. It's a lot of weird little units. So we decided that we're just going to talk about the Adeptus Sororitas. So even though they're part of the Ministorum, we're just going to pick on them specifically. And so
and
the difference between... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you may recognize, if you followed 40K for a while, that the Ministorum, those units used to be in the Inquisition Codex in the last edition. So now they've been split out and combined with Sisters. So it's a little bit confusing, but that's what it is.
Okay, so I can kind of... So yeah, it was originally when they did that, they had like a Witch Hunter Codex, and the Sisters were in there with some of this stuff, and then they're Demon Hunters.
Yeah.
So what they've tried to do is pull a lot of the stuff out and do like Inquisition, and then do Ministorum, and kind of follow the fluff a lot more separately. So I actually found it really weird that the Sisters were under the Ministorum, like for a keyword point of view, because really that's just fluff. They could have just done them all under Sisters, but they wanted to have, there's a couple special characters like Jacobus and things like that they wanted to kind of have synergy with the list, because a lot of Sisters players are used to taking them maybe.
Yeah.
But we're not going to cover those for now. We're just going to cover Sisters, because shout out to Mark Zielinski. He asked specifically about Sisters, and I happen to have a Sisters army, and I love them. We played games, so we have some insight as to what they can do. So we're going to start off with Sisters have... As I said, they have two kind of special rules. One of them is the order, that you say, okay, they're this order, Martyred Lady, or they're Order of our Martyred Lady, or whatever. And then all of your characters that are part of the same order, their abilities only apply to units of that order. So generally, you're just going to make your whole army the same order. There's no reason not to currently.
Yeah.
That might change. Now, they have a really awesome ability that makes them stand out. This is basically called Acts of Faith. These are amazing. So at the start of your turn, now Sisters have always had this, but they've always been hit or miss. Some units' Act of Faiths were fantastic, some were not so much. Now, these guys, at the start of the turn, you roll a d6 on a 2+, you can do an Act of Faith with one unit in your army. That's it. So it's not outrageous. You're like, at first I read this, I was like, that's kind of weak. One unit. Oh, that sucks, right? I'm used to like ignoring cover on all three of my Dominion units or something like that with Meltaguns. But when you read it and you play it, some of these have like definite game-changing abilities. So the first one is Hand of the Emperor, and it's the unit can immediately move as if it were the movement phase. The second one is Divine Guidance, which is the unit can immediately shoot as if it were the shooting phase. Third one is the Passion. The unit can, if it is within 1 inch of an enemy, immediately pile in and attack as if it was the fight phase. And then there's a Spirit of the Martyr. It's one model in the unit receives D3 lost wounds, or you can return a single slain model in the unit with 1 wound remaining. What do you think of those, Darren?
I think that's strong. I mean, it's kind of like a slightly weaker version of Yanari, except you don't have to die for it. Individually, those are all strong abilities. The ability to double move is always strong.
That's
always strong.
Yeah, that is... they're all strong. Like, when I read this list, they're all good. And they're all situational, but that's awesome.
But then you can pick, right? So you pick for the situation, right? So you can shoot again. It's very strong.
Let's use an example of the movement one. So at the start of my turn, I can say, this Rhino full of Battle Sisters is going to move. It moves 12 inches. And then I get my full turn. Now, we played that they count as moving for heavy weapons. And I think that's how it's intended.
Yeah. Like if you advance, you count as advanced in terms of shooting and charging. I think because it says as if it was the movement phase, so the rules would be as if it was in the movement phase. I think that's fair.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. You're like, you're playing Maelstrom. You're like, I need objective 6. It's 30 inches away. Well, I'm going to move in advance because I'm assuming you can advance because you're moving like the movement phase. Yep. So you can move in advance, and then you can move in advance. You have a Rhino full of Sisters on any not any objective, but like line breaker or any, like you're there, right? Like you get that, you're playing old Maelstrom like ETC style. You're like, I need to get in your deployment zone. Bam, bam, bam. They're in, gone.
Yeah.
You can also pump it up and then disembark and then pump it up again. So you could be like, my immolator is going to move 12, get the Sisters out, and then move again. So the immolator is like now charging you to tie you down. And you have Sisters kind of in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
Great.
That's super strong. Yeah.
One of the weakest ones actually is the shoot as if it was the shooting phase. this is great. Like, I say it's the weakest one. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I used that against you. I was like, oh, my unit is going to shoot you as if it's the shooting phase. Then they're going to move and shoot you again, then assault you.
Yep. Yep. No, it's
so
strong.
You could be like, oh, these 4 melta-guns, or like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then the pilot attack, I used that one on my Celestine against Darren. I was like, he charged me to tie her down because I threatened his Devastators with a Rhino. So he charges me, I hit his Rhino.
Dead.
And then at the start of my next turn, I fought his Rhino, killed it, moved, charged his Devastators, fought and killed them. Yeah. And then the Spirit of the Martyr is one I didn't use effectively, but you can just be like, oh, I'm going to return a model or heal D3 wounds. So that Rhino or my Saint could heal D3 wounds a turn, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty sick.
Yeah, you didn't use that, and that's basically a free apothecary without having the 50% chance of failure.
Well, I'm assuming it's not. So you say free, but I'm thinking it's like the points are built into the list, right? Because as we'll get into it, they're not that cheap, sisters. But this one's it's nice. Now, one thing is they did fix it in that you can never choose a unit to do an act of faith more than once. So they were very clear. It was very well written, and that was perfect. Because otherwise, I'd be having my Saint healing D3 wounds, running at the enemy, because there are ways to get more than one, as we'll get into, but it's pretty cool. So that's one of the main rules. The next one is they have Shield of Faith, which is a 6+ invulnerable save across the whole army, including tanks. And they can they can stop enemy psychic powers, and it's on a single D6 instead of 2D6. So the whole army, any powers cast on them or near them, I can just always stop. But it's only 1d6, so as we saw, it's kind of like, unless you roll really poorly.
Yeah. But
'cause most powers fail on a 4, and it's like, so it's like, it doesn't come into effect a lot, but it's just kind of cool.
Yeah, and 6+ invuln is nice, but unless you're getting hit by -4 all the time, you got a 6+ save anyway. It'd be awesome if it's 5+, and there are things in here that make it to 5+, which makes it really good. But I guess it's like the deathless save for 6+, right? So you'll save X number of people per game with your 6+ invuln.
Yeah, and with rhinos at 10 wounds, it's almost like it's 1 point something wounds you're adding when somebody are shooting melta-guns at you. Kinda, not really, right? But yeah, not at all, because it's D6 after the save, but you know what I mean. It's something that they had that in the old book, so it's nice to see that carry through, and it makes them like, why would I take toughness 3 Marines? Well, they have these kind of rules that make them cool.
Can rhinos deny then? They have the rule, and they're a unit. Doesn't say vehicles can't do it.
Well, there's no. So you got to kind of get that out of your head. There's no real vehicles in this edition, right? Like, vehicles are essentially just units. Yeah. Like, we had that in one of our games. Like, the first game I ever played, which was like a few weeks ago now, I was like, can I hide my units behind my dead rhinos? No, they're just models. You just take them off, right?
Yeah.
And they do have Shield of Faith, so yeah, your rhino on a single D6 can try and stop.
Nice.
But you have to remember, so if you get, like, a smite off, the minimum cast on that's like a 5.
Exactly.
So, like, if you roll like a 5 and then I get a 5 or a 6, sorry, it's like it's something that's never really gonna happen. Like, it's almost one of those. It's like, it's nice they threw it in, but it does really nothing. But they don't, I wouldn't count.
They don't have any psychers, so it's your anti-psyker defense. So, like, Necrons don't have psychers; they have one unit that can attempt to deny stuff, right? So every army has something that can try and deny, even if they don't have psychers. So
yeah, except my deny is
one.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go on to the units. There's not many, but there's some very cool stuff. So I'm going to take the first one because I'm greedy, Darren. You can have the second.
Yeah.
Because she's one of my favorites. I have Saint Celestine is back. She is an HQ. She's fantastic. She moves 12. She hits on a 2+. Standard strength, toughness 3, 7 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9, 2+ save. She can have her 2 bodyguards. Her 2 bodyguards are 50 points now. I don't know if they're worth it, to be honest.
No, I mean, they're 2+, 4++, 2 wounds, power swords.
But so
take the hits
for 100 points, so because of the character rules, as long as she's not the closest model, she can't be shot.
Yeah.
And neither can they if they're in her unit. It's just, the way that I justified it is, for a few more points, I think it's 10, I can get 10 of the Jetpack girls, the Seraphim So, you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things like, do I run 10 of those girls in front of her, or do I give her 2 Gemini? And I have the old model, so I don't have the Gemini anyway.
And, the thing is, her resurrection ability, it ties Celestine to the Gemini if they're still alive, which suck.
I didn't like at all.
Yeah, which can suck.
Now, you're generally going to kill the Gemini first, so that's not a big deal. So we'll get into that. We're getting ahead of it. So she has Axe of Faith, Shield of Faith, all the standard stuff. Her sword is amazing. It's plus 4 strength, minus 3 to your save, damage 2. So she's doing 6 attacks, 2+, strength 7, minus 3 save, 2 damage. Oh, it's fantastic. Her sword also has a salty 6 8-inch flamer, strength 5, AP -1 that automatically hits.
Yep.
So basically, all Adeptus Sororitas, or Sororitas, I don't know, I'm like losing how to say that, within 6 inches of her add +1 to their invulnerable save, and all Adeptus Ministorum and Astra Militarum get a 6+ invulnerable save within 6 inches of her.
It's great.
So that's a nice bonus. So if you run up 5 rhinos and her behind them, they now have, as Darren said, a 5+ invulnerable save, which isn't. It's pretty good. When you're in a world of las cans and meltaguns, it's pretty good.
For sure.
It's it's not going to stop a lot of the like -1 Ren spammy shooting or damage to like assault cannon, like not the assault cannons, the Gatling cannons from the knights and stuff, but it's decent. She has a 4+ invulnerable save, and so do her Gemini, which is
better than last edition. They only had 5+ in the last edition. There were only 3+ armor in the last one. So
yeah, do I understand? I'm trying to think whether or not I didn't run the Gemini and I found her fantastic, but part of me thinks that most people will run them. So, I think you could run it either way and there's no real, there's advantages to both. So
the other thing is, so you said, you would have your Gemini die first, but she doesn't have that rule anymore where they bodyguard for her. You have.
Well, it's 1 unit.
Oh, it's 1 unit. Yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't matter because you pick the casualties. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because I know exactly what you're saying. I thought exactly about that. I went, no, they're 1 unit. And since they're 1 unit in the entry, they all have the keyword character.
Yep.
So it's a unit of 3 characters. So if they're not the closest, they can't get shot. So it just adds a punch to her and things like. So it's pretty decent. I'm going to skip this rule and come back, but Healing Tears. So at the start of each of your movement phases, you can set up a single Gemini within 2 inches of her and more than 1 inch away from the enemy. I'm assuming that you don't need to pay the points to bring them back. I'm not. I think that needs a fact, maybe, because you're not.
Well, they did say that when you're bringing things back, it doesn't cost you. Yeah.
So that's how yeah, based on the rules, I think it comes back for free as long as you paid the points initially.
Yeah. Otherwise, your 4th act of faith is really bad.
But they have to be next to Celestine. And then the Miraculous Intervention, which is the first time she dies. On a 2+, she's not removed. She's immediately resurrected anywhere on the board 9 inches away from opponents. But if you have Gemini alive, she has to go in her Gemini unit, which is so bad because you're assuming she's going to hit somebody's line.
Yep.
Now it might be good, it might be bad. It's super situational. So this is where the tactics comes in with her. You're like, okay, she's in your line. Do I kill the Gemini first or kill her first and then bring her back into the unit? So she kind of absorbs the extra wounds because she's ultimately has more wounds. Mm-hmm. So you could use her to kind of die and then come back in right next to her Gemini. What I used her for was I was like, okay, she died. I want her somewhere else.
Yeah,
because generally, you're distracting a flank. When I played Darren, it's he kind of put a bunch of units to fight her. He backed up, so now I want her on the other side of the board doing stuff. So I would probably kill the Gemini first in most situations, and then have the tactical flexibility to set her up. But when she comes back. Yeah, so. It is what it is. So
yeah, I like that if you run her by herself, and she's fairly hard to kill. I mean, she's a bit of a beast. You can even, let's say it's turn 3, and in our game, my Leviathan's hitting your back line, and you're like, okay, I need to go back there and take care of it, but there's no way you're gonna get there normally. Then you'd be she's almost dead, or you could even quote unquote sacrifice her into a bunch so she dies, and then almost certainly she's going to come back, and you can put her right in the back, and help sweep up back there. So it can be very tactically flexible.
And the kicker with her is if she dies and you roll 1 to bring her back, her Gemini are removed as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying you're always going to kill her Gemini first, so it's not really a big deal. And then her best rule is that at the start of any of your turns, you can pick a friendly Adeptus Sororitas unit within 6 inches of Celestine to perform an act of faith. It's addition to the one you're normally allowed for the army, and it's free. Like, there's no roll. So this is wonderful. So you can go, hey, I'm Celestine in my Gemini, or my whatever. I'm going to move 12, and then I'm going to move 12, and I'm going to charge you. So her threat range, realistically, is like your board edge if she rolls a boxcar to charge. And with command rerolls, she can almost get in and tie down something turn 1.
Yep.
So, fantastic. She could also use it to, if you're being more defensive, you could, run a unit backwards. You could shoot a tank. You could do whatever you want to do. It's a wonderful rule. I like that rule alone, and she's only like 150 points, makes it her fantastic. So you can use that plus your regular act of faith, and you can run her and like a unit of Seraphim up together and just kind of like turn 1. What I did to Darren is my Seraphim just went into his las cannon teams and tied him down.
And I deployed far outside of your 48-inch Exorcist range, so I thought that was safe.
Because my Exorcists were pretty far back, but yeah. So we'll go on to the next choice, Darren.
Yeah. So this is the Canoness. You know what's interesting? I'll just say they didn't have any rules in here for that special Canoness. What's her name? Veridan or something? That model.
Yeah.
They didn't put
one that they released in plastic not too long ago.
Yeah. So she doesn't have rules in the index, which is a little bit weird. Because the Imperial Space Marine is in here.
Well, she's just a Canoness, and I kind of like it when they do that. Like a Canoness is a Canoness.
Yeah.
You can use that model as it.
So this is the Canoness. So she's kind of like your captain for the sisters. So she's a 6-inch move, 2+2+, 3s across strength, toughness, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, 9 leadership, and 3+ save. Bolt pistol, chainsword, grenades. Interestingly, she can take an eviscerator. You see that actually across a lot of the Ministorum characters. They can all take eviscerators, and she has active faith, shield of faith, a 4+ invuln, and reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly order units within 6 inches. So she's basically a captain, but for the Adeptus Sororitas. And points wise, she's a lot cheaper than the captain.
Yeah, she's cheap.
Yeah,
she's cheap.
I think she's. I'm just looking up here. She's only 45 points, which is really cheap. It's even cheaper than a Tech Marine.
She's good in like a backfield, near. She doesn't synergize well with some of the units in the army, which we'll get into. But she's good as if you have like a fire base in the backfield. You want to reroll 1s to hit. Like you've taken Celestine, and now Celestine, we should point out, does not have a rule that she's unique. But I'm assuming that's going to get fat.
Yeah.
So I'm. Like, yeah, you could take 18 Celestines, you could move them all 12 in, like, you can't fit that in, that was exaggeration, but you can move them all 12, move 12 and charge. I'm assuming that's going to get fact. So the Canoness's main role is she's an HQ to get you command points and to take other detachments, and without her you wouldn't be able to do that unless you took some of the other priests and Ministorum stuff. But
yeah, so
she's decent. I used her in my fire base, next to Exorcist.
Yeah, exactly. You just use them like a captain in a Marine list. Whatever you want not to miss on ones, you just put them there. So
I wish she had more variety. Like she could maybe become more like some of the units and accompany them. But it is what it is, I guess. So we'll move on. The next one, I guess I'll take this one. It's the Imegaphire. This one's kind of cool. It's an elite slot, and it's just a regular sister. So all sisters have like a 3+3. It's usually a 4+3+, but a lot of the characters, some of them have 3+ in combat. But they're toughness 3. She's 4 wounds, 3 attacks. Just standard sister stuff. 3+ save. And so she has a simulacrum. Oh, man, I can't say that.
Simulacrum
Imperialis. And so basically on a 4+, a unit within 6 inches gets to perform an act of faith.
Which is awesome.
It's okay. She's 40 points, so it's like, she's awesome and she isn't. So like I used 3 of them behind 3 Exorcists to make them try and shoot twice. maybe it's better if you're not taking Exorcist, but that's a spoiler for coming up. So what's the next choice then?
I like her. I thought that it would have been War Gear that you would have to pay for, which would have really sucked. But it's actually just an ability for them, so you don't have to pay for it. But you can just see that sitting in the back as like a 35-point option or something. Then you'd be like, oh, I'm never taking that, right? So
yeah, but no, 40 points for everything.
Yeah.
And I happen to have... I was one of those guys that when I bought my sister's army, I wanted to have one of these in every unit, because they used to be a unit upgrade. Yeah. So I literally have, I think it's 8 of these characters.
Well, you could still do that. One in each rhino.
I'm not going to. No, you can't, and we'll get to that.
Okay, so the next is the Hospitaller, who is basically an apothecary for the sisters. So within 3 inches on a 4+, you heal wounds or you return a slain model. So and otherwise they have a sisters profile except with 4 wounds. You can hit people with your chirurgeon's tools, which is the old name for surgeon, and strength 3 -1 damage. So it's probably not going to hurt a lot of people, but yeah. So that's your apothecary.
It is interesting, but you can do it for a 2+ with the Acts of Faith.
Yeah.
So, but now you could double dip it if you're doing like. So this is what I was thinking of. If you're doing like, I know we haven't got to Exorcist yet, but you're doing like 3 Exorcists. And you're kind of doing like a gun line or something, you could use this character to heal them as they get shot. And then you could also use your Act of Faith to heal them. So you could essentially, if you roll well enough, get 2d3 wounds back a turn on a tank, which is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's like points that maybe you don't need to spend. They're better other places, but it's cool to do.
Yeah.
So the next character is the Dialogus. It's basically, she has a loud hailer. And within 6 inches, you can reroll fail morale checks. The army, for the most part, is leadership 8. And for the most part, you're going to have small units. There are some big units that you could have. But with the way leadership works now, you're either going to take a ton of damage or you're not. I personally can't see this character being too effective. But if you're into leadership rerolls, this is your girl.
Yeah,
she's not that expensive.
It's like chaplains for Marines, with the rerolls of they now show no fear. Most people are running, 5-man squads. I don't think you see a lot of chaplains these days. So,
yeah, the game's kind of shrunk down in units. Well, for some armies, but so I don't think you need her. And with command points auto passing, maybe you'd be better off taking these points, putting them towards a canoness, and taking another detachment for a command point. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Next is the sisters, the barn door sisters. So they have the sister stats, of course, and with a superior and 4 sisters, and they come with bolt guns, and you can replace 2 bolt guns with special weapons or 1 with a heavy weapon. And yeah,
but it should say they get a limited access to weapons. Melta, flamer. There's no plasma, multi-meltas, things like that. Heavy flamers.
Yeah.
The thing is that these girls, they're okay. They're 9 points a girl. They're very standard. You can take 10 to 15 of them in a unit, which is like pretty good. You don't get more special or heavy weapons for taking more of them, which is kind of unfortunate. So I don't want to say this, but I'm going to. You're not going to take Battle Sisters unless you want the command points and you need troops. But with all the detachments in the standard book, the Vanguard detachment, all that, you don't need to take these girls. So unless you really want command points, you're not maybe take 3 5-man units, these maybe backfield, because you want those 3 command points and you want to take tons of HQs. But there's not a lot of really good HQ options. Like, you're not going to spam canonesses. So honestly, because of that, I think the Battle Sisters, they're not worth it, because of they're basically 1 point cheaper or the same points as most of the other sisters, but they have less rules.
Yeah, not even for as a chaff screen, I think it's still, you might as well, for that extra point, take the other sister and get some stuff with it,
Yeah, if you want to do one 15-man unit, 15-girl unit, as chaff, as Darren said, because you want the numbers and you want the one choice, yes, that could work, but no. Next one, we have the Seraphim. jury's out on whether or not they're super effective. I really like them, and I'll tell you why. So they're basically a jump pack sister. Now they do hit in combat on a 3+, which is a nice touch, and they have 2 bolt pistols, which we all know is really good because now you can shoot, which is better than their attacks in combat. So it, like shoot and fight, which is great. You can give their commander like a power sword or an eviscerator, which is a nice touch. You can take hand flamers and infernal pistols, which are, for a unit that's getting in your grill, that's a nice touch. The infernal pistols, strength 8, -4 AP, D6, so it's a pretty solid like close range melt-a-gun. Very nice touch. They're expensive though, the infernal pistols, of course. Now the beauty with the Seraphim squad is that you can use your active faith. You can go 12 inches up. You can move 12, and they fly, so you can charge a Last Cannon Devastator squad, a Last Cannon Predator, something that's going to kill your rhinos or kill your units that are advancing. They're a wonderful unit, and combining this with Celestine, now you have Celestine going up and hitting something, and then you have the Seraphim squad going up and tying up or blocking a unit that would then countercharge and kill Celestine. So you're making her better, and they're cheap. They're 11 points a guy. So you're looking at like a unit of 10 for like fairly cheap. They're like 2 points more than a Battle Sister, and then they move 12, and they have 2. It's like they're great.
Yeah, that game.
For what they're using for, they're not going to kill things.
Like
they're going to kill some things, but they're not super effective. They're not going to go in and wreck somebody's army like, oh, it's Magnus going double move into your face, killing stuff. But being able to tie down heavy weapons so that your whole sister army can advance is fantastic.
Yeah, so you used it pretty effectively in that one game. Literally first turn all the way over onto my devs and tied up my last cannons for like 3 turns.
4 last cannons, and he would retreat.
Yeah,
and I would and he would shoot them, but I was in terrain because his last cannons were in terrain, and they would live. And if they're next to these girls, also get to re-roll their invulnerable saves, and they get to deep strike if you want them to. Which I didn't. I say deep strike, but coming anywhere 9 inches away, I think they're better off just on the board jetting at people. Well, it depends on deployment, and there's a million factors, but so they reroll their Shield of Faith save, which is a 6-up, but if you put the Saint next to them, they now have a 5-up rerollable invulnerable save.
Which is very good.
Very good.
A rerolling 5 is a very good save. It's actually maybe even better than just taking like a rend 1 on a 4+,
Well, it actually is statistically.
Yeah.
So if you reroll anything but a 6-up reroll is better than the 1 down roll. So a 5-up reroll is better than a 4-up save. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and in order to stop you tying up my guys, I had to deal with them. I had to devote a significant amount of firepower to deal with them. Meanwhile, you've got all these rhinos and stuff busting up. So, yeah, no, I see their use for sure.
Yeah. So next we have what, Darren?
Celestian Squad, which is basically.
They're elites.
Yeah, they're elites. They're kind of like guardians. Like they guard people, so they have this. They're basically the normal sister stats, but
they hit on a 3+ in combat.
Yeah, and they have this bodyguard rule. So a D6 every time a character loses a wound, if they're within 3 inches on a 2+, they take that wound and it turns into a mortal wound. So they got that typical bodyguard rule that we see across many different factions.
And yeah, so these girls are pretty solid. They get 2 special weapons. I like them because of their 3+ to hit in combat. It's a nice touch, but you could use them to buff. We've talked a lot about Celestine. She's fantastic, but you could use your active faith with these girls in a rhino. You could bump them up the field. You can put the canoness in their rhino, and you bump them up, and then you move them up 12, and then you get out in the enemy line, and you use them to protect your canoness, who's giving reroll 1s to hit in the enemy's face, as well as maybe Celestine. And you just take these models off instead of giving wounds to Celestine. And then if you do that, you're adding like 10 wounds to them, or maybe not quite, and then she's just going to go through way more enemy units. And she is a beast in combat, so it's definitely worth it. And normally you'd say these aren't worth it, but because of the active face, these girls keep up. Yeah, they honestly do. They can keep up with anything.
Everything in this army moves so fast because of active faith. It's crazy. And they're only 5 points more than a Gemini for a squad of 5.
Mm-hmm. Next one is Elite Choice. We have the Mistress of Repentance. She's basically a melee character. She has -2 AP. She's got Siren's sister's stats, but she's +1 to hit, and she's got like 4 wounds, 3 attacks. Act of Faith, Shield of Faith, same stuff. She can re-roll her own Shield of Faith invulnerable saves, so she would also pair up well with the Saint if you want to. And then you can re-roll the advanced, charge, and hit rolls for friendly Repentia units within 6 inches. So she used to be like the sergeant for the Repentia, but now she's just a character on her own, which is kind of weird. And I guess I'll just jump right into the actually, you can take the Repentia.
Yeah, so the Repentia are sisters hitting on 3+ with 2 attacks each, with strength ×2, so only strength 6, -2 AP, 2 damage, and -1 to hit. So they're really hitting on 4+. So I don't think you take Repentia without taking the Mistress as well. They kind of go together in the end anyway, and they don't buff anybody else. So
yeah, the Repentia are a mediocre combat unit. They do a ton of damage in combat, but really, compared to combat troops in other armies, they just don't cut the butter. I don't know if that's even a saying, but they're personally, I don't like them. I haven't liked them for 2 editions of the game. Nothing to do with model preference. They just don't perform. It's an awkward combat unit. Now, could you put them in a Rhino, bump the Rhino up with the Act of Faith, get them out, move, and then charge? Yes. But Saint Celestine's going to be doing that better. And she's going to be using your Act of Faith. Well, she has her free one, and then you're going to be using your Act of Faith to support her. So, personally, I'm just not... I think I'd rather use my Act of Faith to bump other units that are better up than these girls. And without that, they're just going to be marching up or even driving up slowly in a Rhino. And do I care about Strength 6 -2 AP when I can spam Meltaguns? I don't know.
No, because the thing is, Strength 6 is in a real limbo zone, right? So it's between 5 and 7 or 4 and 7. So you're hitting Marines on 3s, whether you're 5 or 6 or 7, but you're not strong enough to hit Rhinos on 4s. So
or
you're not really
popping any tanks.
Yeah, so you're not popping any of those tanks very easily. So the Strength 3 really lets them down, whether it's ×2 or not. So it's that much worse than Strength 4 ×2. You know, it's in terms of how all the toughnesses have worked out for all infantry and for vehicles. So
yeah. So next we have a Retributor squad. This is basically your Devastator squad. They're 10 sisters. They're the same points costs, or very similar enough to the regular sisters, but you can take 4 heavy weapons. So I'd rather take, with the fact that you can move and shoot at -1 and they're a BS 3+ army, I would rather take Retributors than regular sisters. Because, actually, Darren, can you just confirm that they're 9 points a girl? I'm pretty sure they are, but just confirm while I'm talking.
The Retributors?
Yeah, and so why wouldn't you just take 4 heavy bolters and bump them up and get out? Like, instead of a sister squad, I'd rather take these girls with 4 heavy bolters. They do the same job. They have long range. You could even take these girls in the backfield, put your cannon S behind them. They reroll 1s. You know, heavy bolters being strength 5, rend 1 are actually decent. The multi-meltas could be good on them, but they're so expensive compared to a melta-gun that I'd almost say don't take the multi-meltas ever. Yeah. But if you... Like, I have 4 multi-melta ones. I like this unit. They're not the stars of the book. They're between... We're going to talk about the unit next, the Dominions. The Retributors, on a power level, you have the sister squad at the... There's 3 units that basically cost the same. They have different roles, of course. One's troops. These ones are heavy support. And then you have the Dominions, which are fast attack. And they're in that exact order. The sister squads are the worst of the 3. The Retributors are in the middle. Like, they're good. Like, 4 heavy bolter Retributor squads, decent. Then you have the Dominions, which I'm going to let Darren take away because they're gold.
Yeah, so the Dominions are basically sisters, standard sisters, and I think
1 point more though. They're 1 point.
1 point. Yeah, they're 10 points each. So, but they are the ones. They're like the command squad or the veterans that can each take special weapons, which makes them awesome because they can all bring melta guns.
Yeah. Well, 4 of them can. Sorry, 4 out of 10.
Yeah. Other than the Dominion Superior. And
well, you could run them in units of 10, but I think Darren's implying that you don't. You run them in units of 5.
No, I think the game unless you're running large units like 30 or something, I think it punishes you for running semi-large units because of morale.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so people are like MSU is not a thing. Well, I think in fact MSU is a thing because then you don't suffer from the morale phase as much, unless you're going to run large units where then also is not a thing.
And with the superior being leadership 8, if you're running a 5-man unit of these girls, you have to take 2 before you even really care.
Yeah. Yeah. So the cool thing about these guys, not just that they can carry 4 melta-guns, is this Vanguard rule, which I've read through almost all the indexes. I've not seen a lot of things that have this rule. This is basically Scout for 8th edition. So before the first person's turn, after everybody's deployed, these people can make a move.
But after you know who's going first.
Exactly.
Because it says in there that if you both have units that do this, the one whose first turn it is gets to choose whether they go first or second to move them. So that implies that it's after C's.
Yeah, and then if these guys are in a transport, which they almost always certainly will be, it's the transport that gets to move. So don't forget you get to make an act of faith as well. So this like a one rhino. These rhinos are scouting, and then one of them is moving again, and then oh man, it's just crazy.
Or you could think about it this way: you're scouting your Dominions, and then you're moving Celestine up with the Dominions. And then when you move the Dominions, so it allows one other unit. So the downside of the Dominions is within the Rhino. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I got excited. Within the Rhino, you need only Dominions. You can't put anything else in, which sucks. So you can't put... Well, I'm sure it doesn't suck to your opponent. So you can't put your Canonists in there for reroll 1s. Yep. So that's why I was thinking, when I was talking about maybe putting in a unit of Retributors or a Celestine squad, you put them in the Rhino, use your Army Act of Faith with a command reroll to keep up with your Dominions. And then use Celestine's free Act of Faith to keep up with the Dominions as well, and then your whole army's going. And the reason you want the Celestines to keep up with the Dominions is you want to be able to put your Canoness in that Rhino, and maybe even, I don't know, put in a Megafire or 2 in that Rhino. So that way you're double shooting melta-guns, you're rerolling 1s, you're in the grill with your whole army. Maybe not because of kill points, but maybe. It's really up to you.
Well, you know what this reminds me? It reminds me of White Scar's Battle Company, right? The only difference is you can't shoot out of the tanks. You have to get out. Yeah. But like you've got 6, maybe 5, 4 to 6 or 7 rhinos popping up in your face, 12-inch move, moving again, and then you got all these melta-guns in your face. Like, what are you going to do? Like,
sure
it's pretty...
You were scared. I ran 4 of these units on you, and you were like, the look on your face was priceless turn 1.
Yeah.
Because it's like saints in your grill. I'm tying down your last cannons with my Seraphim, and then my Dominion squads are coming in. And even a melta-gun, you get out 3, you move 6, they're shooting, and then depending on whether it's a Rhino or an Immolator, that tank is also shooting and assaulting. This army this is the strength. These Dominions is the strength of the army. And the scout move can be backwards. So you can deploy in the line, and your opponent maybe deploys up, gets first turn, he's going to wreck you. He's got a bunch of, I don't know, whatever. Maybe you can back out of range. Or I used a building. I scouted up behind a building so you couldn't shoot me.
Yeah, I just remember you're like, okay, I'm going to scout move. I'm like, okay. Oh, now I'm going to active faith move. I'm like, okay. And, oh, now it's my turn. Now I'm going to move. I'm like, oh, shit. It's literally 3 moves.
Yeah. So the next one, you want to take the Rhino?
Yeah, so this is just basically the Sororitas Rhino is just a Rhino, but it has Shield of Faith. Yeah.
So Rhino can, because people don't know, we've never talked about a Rhino on the show, so why don't you run through it quickly?
So Rhino can move 12, so at full wounds it moves 12. It kills things at 6+ weapon skill in combat. I've lost Wolfen to Rhinos.
It adds up, right? 2 of them do 1 damage.
3+ ballistic skill, strength 6, toughness 7, wounds 10, and 3 attacks in combat, 3+ saves. So that's your typical Rhino. All Space Marine Rhinos are like that. It comes with a Storm Bolter, and you can take a Hunter Killer Missile if you really want to. Rhinos are usually around 60-something points. I believe this Rhino is similar. Let me just go back here.
It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more.
I think it's a little bit more because of the 6+ invuln.
Yeah, so it's around there. It's fine. It's not as super expensive, but it's
10,
not cheap.
It's 10 points more, 73.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you add the Stormbolter, which is 2 points, so $75 for a Rhino.
Man, I love smoke launchers now. It -1 to hit. That's one thing we should say right now. Anything that gives -1 to hit is
Gold.
phenomenal. And so that one turn, you're like, okay, maybe the guy put his stuff in the back corner, so you can't get to him. You then can scout your Dominions. Well, you could scout your Dominions, move and then run, and then advance.
And smoke.
Move and advance and smoke. And you have this wall of like toughness 7 in the guy's grill, just -1 to hit, and then when he kills anything, everything gets out and just destroys him.
Yeah.
Now, I personally don't like the rhinos in this list. The only time that I would take a rhino, because we haven't talked about the reason why yet, but we're going to get there. The only time I would ever take a rhino is for that Celestian squad that I was talking about, so that you can put like 8 of them in it, because it transports 10, so you can put like 8 of them and a Canoness and maybe something else, or maybe not, just to get the numbers. Because as we said, you're probably going to run a Dominion at 5 or 6 models. You're not going to want to put them in a Rhino. It's a waste of space. You're going to want to put them in an Immolator. And so an Immolator is the same as a Rhino in every way, except it's like a Razorback. It's -4 to transport capacity, but it can take basically a heavy weapon or a special weapon. And the one thing is it cannot transport jump pack models. So, which is kind of cool. I didn't think you could, but I was hoping that you could put the Saint in, but you can't.
No.
Now, the wicked thing about the Immolator is it can take basically a twin multi-melta, which is like 57 points. So you don't take the twin multi-melta. Sorry, guys, it's just the way you can get the Melta guns in the scouting, you don't need to pay that kind of points for Melta in this army, period.
Nope.
You can take a twin heavy bolter, which is cheap. It's really cheap. But I don't think you're really taking advantage of the army. The no-brainer choice, unless you can't afford it on one of them or two of them, and you have to take the heavy bolters, is the Immolation Flamer, which is a 12-inch range, assault 2d6, strength 5, -1 AP, automatic hitting flamer.
Ugh, that's sick.
And so if you put a Dominion squad in an Immolator, it moves 12, shoots, unloads its cargo, did I do that wrong? Moves 12, moves 12,
Scouts,
unloads its cargo, moves 12, and then can shoot the enemy board edge.
advances, and then can flame you, because it's an assault weapon.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect the -1 to hit, so you have reach. And it ignores one of the things that I find infuriating about this game is the -1 to hits, like Dark Shrouds and things, because we all play Dark Angels for some reason. It's like you could nuke like 5 or 6 of these in somebody's grill with the Meltagun girls behind them. Really, really strong. Now, Is it like top tier tournament winning strong? I have no idea, but I know that it's strong. You can go up, kill the chaff. You can melt the tanks and monsters. You can melt the Primaris Marines or the Marines. These Immolators with the Immolation Flamers are literally gold in this. If you're taking Sisters and you're dead set on Sisters, I would take as many of those with Dominions in them as possible.
You have to, I think. All I remember is thinking, if those Rhinos were all Immolators, I'd be super scared right now.
So I don't like to proxy, so I have mine as Rhinos. I didn't have the turrets assembled. I have them in sprue. And we were doing a battle report, so I took them as Rhinos, and I kicked myself all game. I kicked myself for not making them Immolators. And I took 10-man Dominion squads as well in the battle report you guys will see. And I don't recommend that. I just didn't want to proxy on a battle report.
And they, if there's Immolators, I don't get my Marines out because they're toast, right? They just get toasted by this flamer. It's crazy.
Well, even still, like I wound on 5s. I would shoot your Rhinos with them if I had to. Meltaguns and these things, like I shoot 4 Meltaguns and I whiff a little bit, and your Rhino has 2 wounds left. I'm putting a flame in. I have a 12-inch range.
Yeah.
And then they assault. Like I wouldn't even advance these because with scouting Dominions, you're going to move up, flame, and then assault and tie down the enemy's army. And the retaliation is not going to be great.
Yeah, no, it's great. So we didn't actually say what it was. It's 35 points, which is the same as a twin assault cannon. It's 12-inch range, as we said. Assault 2d6 flamer, so auto hits.
No, I said what it was. Come on, man.
Did you?
You were daydreaming.
No, I don't think it is. Anyway,
we'll see.
It's pretty sick. Yeah.
And then the next is the last choice. I'll let you take it away because you love this thing.
So it's the Exorcist, the organ tank. And so this is basically it's like a Predator, so it's strength 7, toughness 8, but it's got 12 wounds, so it's a little bit tougher to kill than a Predator actually. And it has the Exorcist missile launcher, which is 48 inch range, heavy, D6, strength 8, -4, D3. So
they ruined it.
I know. So I was whenever you rolled that damage, I'm like, okay, and you roll 5, I'm like, oh damn, 5 damage. You're like, no, 3 damage. I'm like, what? That sucks.
And they're 160 points.
It's a lot, but that's pretty strong because you get D6 shots.
So on average, 2 of them is 7 shots a turn.
-4 is strong, like Melta.
300 points. I can almost get 2 Dominion squads with 4 Melta guns in 2 emulators. I'm like, if I can squeeze 100 more points, I can have 2 of those instead, and I think they're better in every way.
Yeah, so like I'm looking at the army, and your whole army is pushing up, and you're leaving these things at the back. All it takes is 1 or 2, assault teams dropping in, deep striking, tie these guys up, right? And they do nothing.
And if you want a backfield unit, 5 Naked Sisters or 5, just on an objective in the backfield, because people are like, oh, you're abandoning your backfield. Yeah, but Celestine could just suicide and teleport back, or you can just use your Act of Faith to literally run a Rhino back.
Yeah.
It goes up, your Rhino goes up, drops off your Celestine squad, and you just go, okay, my Rhino's running back to my objectives. Like, the Act of Faith makes this army so mobile, and the Exorcists are just not.
And people in 7th, people are running all Exorcists because, quite frankly, Sisters didn't really have much else.
Well, they were garbage in 7th, but
they were still garbage. You need 6 shots and you roll a 1, right? It always happens like that. But now it's like you got a whole bunch of other stuff that you can spend that crazy amount of points on. So yeah, I don't think it's worth. If you really want to stick something at the back, then take a Rhino as a dedicated transporter, stick it at the back with 5 Sisters in it. Who can pop out and screen or go on an objective, Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for the list. There's not a lot of units. I love this army. It is so cool. It seems to be pointed somewhat appropriately. Like, there are some things in this list that are pretty fantastic. Now, the one thing that it does struggle with is when you're scouting or vanguarding, the spammy list that we're going to talk about, it's not a lot of drops, but it's not a small amount of drops either. So there's a good chance against a lot of people you're going to go second, which means you're going to be scouting in short range and you're going to be taking lots of firepower. So you're going to have to play it carefully and not always scout. If you're playing against somebody with a few drops, maybe it's not worth it because they're going to catch you out. So you really want to play the drop game with this army. That's why I say go as few drops as you can, which is usually about 7 or 8. That's the only reason I would take the Celestines, is to lower your drop count over something like a Seraphim unit. So this is what I think the ideal, right now, Sisters of Battle pure list with no allies is, and Darren can concur with me if he does, or he can disagree, but we both kind of came to the same conclusion. You take Celestine for sure. Whether or not you take her Gemini is whether or not you have the points, but for 100 points you can get like 5 Sisters with 4 Melta guns. So it's a tough call, but I would rather just take Celestine on her own. That's me. You do take a Canoness. You take her for the extra command point and for the second detachment. You then take, in my opinion, a 9-man Celestine squad in a Rhino. So that way the Canoness is in there and it cuts back on your drops. And then you just take as many Dominions with Melta guns in Immolation Flamers as you can. I believe the magic number is 7. I think my list has 7. My list is on the other table, but you take 7 of those, and you basically have an in-your-face army because the Immolators with a unit in them is just over 200 points. So 7 of them gets you up to like 1,400 or something like that, 1,500, and then you have Celestine and the other unit. You're at 9 drops, which is not amazing, but it's not far off. Most armies are around the 7 to 10, 11 range. So you're going to be going first enough, but it would be nice to maybe drop a few get less drops, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah, the thing I have to say about going first is you can still be aggressive. It kind of depends what you're playing, right? Like if your opponent doesn't have any way of dealing with 6 or 7 immolators in their face, they might panic. They might deploy inappropriately. They might you might be able to limit the way they can move out with like a wall of immolators. Like it can really limit your opponent as well. So as Chris said, you got to use that kind of tactically.
And that's unique to this army. Like, if you want Devastator units, you can buy them in Marines. You can take Azrael. You can take Girly Man and reroll the hit, reroll the wound, whatever. -1 hit. They're fantastic. When I read the Sisters of Battle list, I go, why would I take these over regular Marines? I know they're a little bit cheaper, but what do they offer that regular Marines don't? Dominion squads, Immolators, Celestine.
Mm-hmm. Acts of Faith.
Acts of Faith. And in order to use the Act of Faith, my opinion, very heavily, you need a Celestine squad or a Seraphim squad. But the Celestine squad allows you to put the Canis in, bring it up, reroll ones on all your Meltaguns and all your... it's just your Meltaguns because your Immolators auto-hit. And it's a wonderful list. And we've had a lot of fun playing Sisters. And I think... Would you say you think they're overpowered? Or what kind of power level you think they're at?
No, I don't think they're overpowered at all. I mean...
I know it's still early, but we've played...
Yeah.
I think they're perfect. They're mobile. They're competitive. You don't quite get as many units as you think you're going to get. When you make your list, you pull the army out, you're like, it looks a little bit small, but it's all pretty good. And
That's dies. Like everybody, man.
That's everybody. But and as Darren said, like, I don't know if you... But the stuff's like toughness 3 plus save, it dies.
It does die.
It is a little bit soft. Like, Darren was really worried in our game, and then he's like, it does die faster.
Bolters start coming out and things start falling. Yeah. So that's but I think the important thing to say is that they're way better than they were in 7th. They are
playable,
imminently usable. You will have a good time playing them, and you should break your Sisters out if you have a collection. I want to get some, but it's like too expensive to get a whole army of Sisters. But if you have them, you should break them out and at least give them a try, because it's really fun to play against them. I really enjoyed playing against them. It certainly gives you a lot of things to think about when you got these things going on and things are double moving or double shooting.
It's like you don't think of it. You're like, I'm only going to take 8 Meltaguns. I should be alive with a couple wounds to tie you up. No, I'm getting shot by 12 Meltagun shots now. It's good. Yeah. Cool. So that's it for our Sister Battle review. Hopefully it gives you guys some insight. That goes out to Mark, as I said. Thanks, buddy. Check out Mark's podcast, Countercharge. It's a Kings of War podcast, but he's promised me he's getting into 40K. So let's go on to Q&A. So why don't you take the Facebook questions away?
Yeah, so I added a few more since we started. So Jeff Brown wants to know, what are our predictions for what codexes will contain and what will be the first out, and how long do we think it's going to be till they come out?
I think the Death Guard Codex will come out in October.
With Mortarion in it?
Yeah.
You think it's going to take till October for that?
Yep, because I have a feeling General Handbook 2.0 or some kind of Age of Sigmar release is coming in September, from what I've heard.
You think they're going to let 40K, the new edition, ride for a couple months unmolested?
Yes. I hope. I would even be inclined if a Death Guard book came out in September 1st, let's say, that don't use it till October. Like, let people just play with the indexes for a little while. Like 3-4 months. Play with your indexes. Play with a blander version of the game. Get it figured out, get it sorted, and then start releasing the books. Wait for feedback, GW. Wait for, to see what's broken, that you can fix it. Don't jump into rules, because you'll just ruin a really good thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I wonder, and you can say what you think about this. Do you think there's a chance that they will release all the codexes at the same time?
No.
Or else are we going to run into the 0%. Issue where
0%.
Where some armies get left behind again?
Could happen. Yep. Nope. The 0% chance all the codexes are coming out at once. I even would say I think there's a 0% chance that we'll get codexes with just releases in them. I think it'll go to the Sigmar style, where you're going to get more army rules, more codexes, and they're going to come. It's going to be weird. There's going to be new factions. Some armies are going to get left behind. And I have a feeling that this might be the last update Sisters ever get. I would hate that, but I really do. I would not be surprised. And so they're okay right now, right? And as long as the power creep... You have to have a power creep in the game. You don't have to have a power creep in the game, but there generally is one to sell models. And maybe that's not intentional, but they don't want to have a new book come out that's worse. Now, if they keep adjusting points, the Sisters could stay relevant for many years, but they will get bland and boring in a year or two. But it's okay.
Do you think maybe the codexes will be small releases? So 2 or 3 different detachments, a few extra stratagems you can use that are army specific,
items.
and that's it.
Yeah, it'll be like Sigmar style, like 5-6 pages of special items and rules and things for your army, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And it'll be based off keywords too. So I have a feeling that like if you're playing a pure army, you'll get more bonuses than...
Yeah, for sure. I think, though, that flavor that's missing from Space Marines right now is coming in the codexes, I suspect.
I hope so. I think it's going to be Death Guard, then Primaris Marines, and I think the Primaris Marines are going to see a rash of releases. And we've already seen sneak peeks to a lot of them. The Primaris Marines are going to get a big rash of releases. It's going to piss a bunch of people off, because they're like, oh, they just got all these new units. But that's... Regular Space Marines may eventually also become like they might eventually become like direct order only and get no love, right? And I think because right now Primaris Marines aren't so hot in army lists.
No, they're not, because you can't take them in any transports for one, and you can't upgrade them with anything. They're more expensive and very much less flexible. So, I have the whole box of Primaris Marines, and the Lieutenant's the only one I use because the only thing that gives me reroll wounds.
Yeah, so that's what I think.
Yeah, but there has to be Primaris Marines soon, because literally you can't take them in transports. Any kind. You can't even put them in a mastodon.
Yeah.
So, okay, next question is from Jace Sharon. What are your thoughts on the new Necron rule for quantum shielding? So if people don't know, the quantum shielding rule basically allows you, when you take multiple damage on your vehicle that has this rule, if you can roll a d6. If you roll less than the number of damage you took, that damage is negated.
It's amazing.
So It basically makes Necron vehicles not immune, but very hard to kill with things like las cannons and meltaguns, but that much easier to... Not easier, but because they're a little bit kind of less tough than, say, Land Raiders and stuff, but a little bit easier to kill with things that do single wounds like plasma guns and stuff like that, assault cannons.
So there's a lot of people gravitating towards an anti-tank approach because of things like all these wounds and Land Raiders and Knights. And if you're not equipped, I think it was Alex. I was like, if you're not equipped to kill 1 or 2 tanks a turn, you're in trouble. And I think that this rule allows the Necrons to counter that. And which is good, because everything needs a counter in the game to rein it in. So now it's like, oh, you took all las cannons, I don't care. Like, I'm going to come in there and just kill you.
You almost you roll a 6 and you use your command point to re-roll it into a 1.
Or a 2 or a 3,
so
right?
It sticks,
I wouldn't roll to a 1. Well, you can't choose it, but...
Okay, Ascari asks us, what's our favorite aura stacks? No, he didn't specify this, assuming that certain auras that we think don't stack currently still stack, but...
Yeah, so like my favorite combo of auras is actually, if you're talking about stacking them, is what Darren does. So tell me what you do.
So I do my Dark Angels version of Gulliman, which is Azrael and a Dark Shroud. So that's a 6-inch window of 4+ invuln and -1 to hit, which makes things really hard to kill.
And then you have the Lieutenant, which is reroll 1s to wound.
Then Azrael gives reroll all hits, and Primaris Lieutenant gives reroll 1s to wound. So that combination of 3 units right there makes a static unit or a moving group really hard to kill and really effective offensively. That's my current mojo. Because
I was thinking of this, like Girly Man, I don't really count him as aura stacking, right? It's just one guy, one aura, right? So that's a good one. That's a good example of taking multiple auras to really do damage. A lot of my other lists, all my other armies will have like one model with a really good aura, and that's it. So I don't really stack them. And most of them are written to not stack. The only one that sneaks through is the Dark Shroud, and I think that's going to get fact.
Yeah, the other nice one is if you're just pulling up a Dark Shroud behind some Rhinos or some Razorbacks and they popping smoke, you got -2 there for a turn.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff Brown asked again, the biggest winners and losers of 8th.
So that's
hard
really,
at this
really
time.
hard. Really hard.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest winners, Orcs, Sisters of Battle, Harlequins. Tyranids. Those 4 armies were garbage last edition. And now are very playable, if not effective. Some may say competitive. Very competitive for some of them, actually. So
in fact,
those are the 4 winners.
A lot of people are thinking, how can I counter orcs, as a question going through their mind when they make their army now. So those definitely. Dark Eldar started to get a little bit better with the Inari stuff at the end of 7th.
And Dark Eldar were never... I don't know. I think the Dark Eldar being terrible was just a lot of people not using them or not... Because you could spam some Dark Eldar stuff that was pretty good, but there was like a really high model count. It was really spammy and kind of boring. So... But as far as like the biggest losers, I would say Yanari, because they went from being ridiculous to more reined in, still very competitive, still very good, like Craft World Eldar. They lost some of their mojo, I guess you could say. Is there anything else really lose?
Tau.
Or
the Riptide particularly, but
yeah, I think
Tau.
I can't
maybe
comment on that because I have one Tau friend that says that they're really bad, and or maybe it's just his collection. And I have one Tau friend that says they're really good. I don't really know what to believe, so I would say, but all in all, I think like Eldar really anything that was top tier definitely fell down to an upper middle tier, or like the game seems to be. Like, there's still... I have some armies that are just disgusting that I've built, and there's some lists and some obvious lists that are way better. Anything with, like, a bubble of -1 to hit's way better than most other things. So, but, yeah, I think that's the biggest loser would be Craft World Elder. They went from being, like, just ridiculous, or Yanari, to somewhat normal.
Yeah.
Like, particular units, I think Swooping Hawks are one of the biggest losers in the game.
Were they winners before, though?
I really liked them. I didn't play with them that much, but I liked them.
Yeah, I think in terms of from a moment of crazy prominence to moment of people selling them off, I would have to put the Riptide up there.
Actually, and Astra Militarum's a winner, too. I think this edition, there's not a lot of losers, but there's a lot of winners. Right now. I might change my tune in 2 months.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Riptide has gone from being something that everybody auto took in multiple units down to something that people are trying to sell on Kijiji. So that's a big loser. Not that it's bad, it's just not as overpowered as it was before. So, okay, next question is from Josh. How many CanHammer members are going to be switching armies? That's the first question. And do you find your old or current armies are still at the tier they were in 7th?
So I think a lot of people will be just because of the new thing. Now, I play a lot of armies. I guess I'm most known competitively as Eldar/Magnus Demons. I would say that my Magnus Demons did not drop a power level at all.
No, they did not.
They may have gone up a little bit, may have not. In some ways they went up, some ways they went down. It just depends how you look at it. Things like Kairos maybe aren't necessarily worth it anymore. Magnus is still worth it, but his role is very different, and the build around him is very different. As far as like a lot of my old armies, though, that I love playing, like Sisters, Astra Militarum, my Deathwing, all much better. So
You've played those more in the past 5 days than you played in like the last year.
Kinda, yeah. For the most part, yeah. For the last year, yeah, for sure. Now, so for me, and I have my orcs too that I haven't tested out yet in this edition, but for me, I literally was like, I'm not doing, like when Sigmar dropped, I did a new army because I was like, ugh, and I'm glad I did. For this, I'm actually just cracking. I'm playing all my existing armies and adding to them and touching things up and painting units that I had sitting in my closet because I think everything's good. And I think this is the time that if you want to get really good with an obscure army, it's the time to do it now because it's not going to be that far behind the curve. In 3 years, it might be. The Sisters might be unplayable again in 3 years. I don't know. But right now is the time to play them.
Yeah, I went into 8th with the mindset that I was going to just keep playing the armies that I know how to play and just try and figure out what's good with them now. So I've stuck with Dark Angels for the most part and a little bit of Space Wolves, but mostly Dark Angels. And I think I have a fairly good handle on what's good and what's not good for Dark Angels in its various forms. I do have some new armies that I will be starting to play, but I'm still focused on my Dark Angels in terms of at least I'm going to be good at what I used to play, figure out what it is in this game, and then branch out into other things as opportunities arise. But yeah, as Chris says, I think this is an opportunity really for people to get those armies that haven't seen the light of day for a long time and just try them. Try them, because everything is fairly even right now and nobody has a dominant
There's definitely crappy things. I just think that using a slightly suboptimal unit now has less of an effect on your win-loss ratio than it will in 2 years in 6 months when people are starting to figure things out. So this is just this is the time to use those chimeras that I'm telling you, I've played games, I don't think they're so hot anymore. I have 10 of them, I've played tons of games, I'm keeping them in my list sometime, but I can already tell that I don't want to take them in the future.
Yep. Okay, next question is from Adam Love. With what was spoiled from Forge World, do their units seem notably more powerful than GW's?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
but the points cost might balance that out. Like the Mastodon, way more points than I think it's worth, but it's really good.
I think people expected Forge World units to be, like before, very powerful, but as usual, the points costs are pretty high. So we'll see what actually sees regular play on the tables. I guess it depends on what's else in the armies that they're for.
So I'm going to predict it's just like traditional Forge World.
Yeah.
There's going to be 1 or 2 Forge World things that are bananas, and they're crazy, and they're powerful and undercosted, and the rest is going to be overcosted and cool factor. That's what I'm predicting, because that's what they always do. And when the rules came out, it's very obvious that they didn't plan the Forge World. Just the fact that they have Creed Rough Riders instead of just saying these are Rough Riders, but they're cooler models. Like that alone. Because GW doesn't even really have good Rough Rider models. If any, you have to direct order them. They're not worth it. So that's a real opportunity, especially for a guy like me, to buy Forge World Rough Riders. But then they make their own rules for them, which means, am I allowed to use them without the Forge World rules? Do I have to use them with the Forge World rules? I don't know. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. I've already played some games with my Mastodon and my Leviathan Dreadnought. I think the Leviathan Dreadnought's worth it.
It's amazing. It's disgusting.
It's really good, and I think it's actually priced appropriately. It's actually the same price as 3 speeders. So
I am pissed off with the Lucius pod in that the mold is broken. You can't buy them anywhere, and they're the only way to transport Dreadnought. So it's do we just allow people to use regular pods for them? Yeah, but it kind of means why didn't you just let Dreadnoughts go in regular pods and then just get rid of the Lucius, right? If the mold's broken, or if they fix the mold and they bring it back, then bring it back. But if it's unobtainable, why make rules? Forge World should not be making rules for models they don't sell.
Yeah. And they kept a lot of those, right? As far as we know.
And the Lucius pod should just say this is a regular draw. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I know some people might say I bought 4 of them back in the day. This sucks for me, but it's just not fair for a kid that's I want to drop in a Dreadnought and I can't buy a pod for it. And I know people say just proxy a regular pod, but you shouldn't have to, right? Forge World is a miniatures, so they should be making the miniatures. And if the GW doesn't have rules for it, then they make their own. They shouldn't be making their own for stuff that GW could be.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
Next.
I think GW should come out with a Dreadnought drop pod. But the Mastodon, it's overpriced, but it is super cool.
Oh man, that damage 5 to flyers was disgusting. It was scary.
Yeah, the Sky Reaper is bad. Okay, Louis Lilac asks, what looks good for loyalists and traders from the 2 Forge World books? I don't actually have the book, and I haven't looked at the E. I know that Logan has the E version. I just know what the Mastodon and the Leviathan do, and what was spoiled by GW.
And on the internet, the Leviathan's the real winner from a lot of those books, and the rest I don't know, as Darren said. Okay, so maybe we can revisit that at a future date.
Mm-hmm.
And from Twitter, I got a question from Alex. It wasn't really for the show, but I thought we'd bring it up. Is a Whirlwind or a Dakapred worth it in a Space Marine army, Darren?
Whirlwind, I don't think so.
I agree with the whirlwind comment.
I think the Dakapred. So you're really comparing a Dakapred to a unit of devs, and so that's the comparison.
Well, the Dakapreds are way cheaper than the last Cannon Preds. But
sorry, what do you mean by Dakapred? Let me clarify. I thought
he meant autocannon 2 heavy bolters.
Oh, okay. I thought he meant the quad las cannon Predator.
Because that's a lot cheaper than the quad las cannon.
Yeah, the quad las cannon is 202, which is not that much.
And the DACA one is at least like 45 points cheaper.
Yeah, so a dev squad, five devs, 65 points, 4 las cannons, 165. So 4 las cannons, whereas 4 las cannons basically on a Predator for 202. It's a lot harder to kill a Predator. If you're only running dev squads with 4 las cannons and 1 other chaff, once they start taking more than 1 wound, you're losing las cannons.
Well, you would never take a 5-man dev with 4 las cannons. You would take 2. You would take the winged baby, and then you would just take multiples of them, because there's no point in it, because only one. It's like they're not that much more points if they are, and one model in the unit gets to fire their weapon at +1 to hit. So you never want more than 2 heavy weapons, because then you're using the maximum number of Devastator rules, and then you get to fire one of your weapons twice, and you choose the one that hits on a 2+, once per game. So you definitely go devs with like 2 weapons. If it's like heavy bolters and they're cheaper, you could probably go with 4 and say to F with it, but generally you're not going to do that. Predators also get -1 ballistic skill when they lose like 6 wounds. 6 wounds, I think it is. I personally have looked at it in some builds. So this isn't a Vulcan build. Part of me thinks that the Predator's better. In builds with like Azrael Dark Shroud or Girly Man, the Devastators are definitely better. But I would almost say you could do Predator with las cannons or devs with las cannons. It would probably be like 2 units of devs with 2 las cannons. Or you could do like DACA Pred and DACA devs. Like there's no difference. I would say you can't, like, they're almost interchangeable. But I like the devs better, personally. Next one is from Leonix. People ask about what is good or bad in 8th. Is anything just weird? Any rules you find that are pretty weird? Or weird units?
I think it's weird that Necron Wraiths have lost reanimation.
Well, that's weird. They never really had it unless they were in a fortress.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But it just seems like, this was a funny question. What is weird? I don't know what's weird. I think it's weird that the Space Marines came with so little flavor out the gate.
I think it's weird that the Primaris Psyker is like its own faction instead of being in the Guard list. I also think how they divvied up some of the Inquisition stuff's kind of weird.
Yeah, that is weird.
But generally, a lot of stuff is fairly bland. Mm-hmm. They got rid of a lot of special rules, so a lot of stuff's just pretty standard. I'm not really too weirded out by anything.
I think it's weird that my Predator has to have a penalty for shooting heavy weapons.
I don't. I like it. I think it makes sense. I really think it makes sense. I think you need to sacrifice shooting for mobility. And I love what they did with the assault weapons, how you can run in assault or advance in assault weapons, and you can shoot pistols in combat. And now it makes the choice. This is the best example of this is the brilliance of this edition. This is the best example. There are flaws with this edition, but this is the best example. An Eldar jet bike. You can take a scatter laser, but if you move, you're -1 to hit, but it's 4 shots, long range, so you can sit back and shoot more damage. Or you can take a shrieking cannon, and then you can advance and shoot, but it's only 3 shots. So it's like there's definitely advantages. Do you want more mobility? You take the cannon. Do you want to sit back? You take the scatter laser. The real answer is you always take the cannon. But you know what I mean? That it's like it's a trade-off now. There's definite advantages to taking different guns. And you know what? Those heavy weapons are nasty to play against. And so it's nice when somebody has heavy assault cannons that are 24-inch range. They have 12 shots, which is retarded on Razorbacks. But I can be 25 inches away, and then you're -1 to hit me. And that's wonderful for turn 1. That's wonderful.
I think they've done really good with the weapons, like, so I'm talking like Space Marine weapons, for example. It's you really have to think about it sometimes. Missile launcher,
sometimes heavy bolters are
blast
worth it,
cannon,
man.
yeah,
Like,
heavy bolter, or I guess I'm like you, I don't like the multi-melta, but like the decision between blast cannons and missile launchers, but they can do chaff and they're flexible, but they have less rend. It's like I spent so much time in the last few weeks thinking about these questions: plasma versus this, or melta versus. It's really fun to really kind of have those options, and you can build 6 different lists where your guys are outfitted 6 different ways, so I think they did really well with the weapons. Yeah,
that was off topic, but it's good. It's good, and I like that a lot of crappier weapons got a boost with shots. So a lot of really terrible weapons just shoot a lot of shots, which is good. And I used to think like, shots are going to really matter in this edition. The amount of shots. I think that like rend is the biggest deal. Period. I think like the difference between a multi-laser and a heavy bolter is like the strength versus rend. There's no reason to ever take a multi-laser over a heavy bolter. Ever. Period. And so there's a lot of things like that. Like rend is a big deal. So... but mobility too. So I think they did a really nice job. Anyway, so last question from Tristan: is it better for Deathwing teleport in or drive up in a Crusader, both with an Ancient and a Chaplain?
Neither. They should drive up in a Mastodon.
No, that's a wrong answer. That's a dumb answer. No, I'm just kidding. So it depends.
Yeah.
I don't think enough of them fit in a Crusader to make it worthwhile.
Fine.
I would say teleport in. There's better units to put in the Crusader, or just save the points on a Crusader and teleport more in.
Yeah, so keeping in mind you can't do a whole army teleporting in, right? You have to have half your units on the board. So you could do that.
That's easy though with scout spam, bud. Easy.
So you could do, I think in my experience and from what I've heard from other people, a whole Deathwing army probably not that effective versus a mixed Deathwing plus either Green Wing or Raven Wing. I think that works better in terms of covering different things that you're going to face, but certainly a bunch of Terminators dropping down in your face turn 1, turn 2 is something you have to deal with.
Especially with Belial. Well, these ones are combat.
Knights.
These ones are combat, but like, it's good. It's good. Definitely worthwhile.
Deathwing Knights and that flail where the damage rolls over. Oh, it's nice.
So I'm actually just going to take the biggest winners and losers. Deathwatch, I think, might be one of big winners. And I just want to say before we end the show, Deathwatch have some weird teleport shenanigans, and I've been trying to make some lists. I don't own any models, but I do own like 2 of the sets, but their teleport homers allow you to like teleport Terminators back. And so keep an eye out for some Deathwatch shenanigans. I think it's going to come. So I think they might have won out this edition, but I have no proof. But reading through them, they have some tricksy stuff, and whenever there's tricksy stuff, there's always some kind of abuse that could really help them win. So I think Deathwatch are to be watched out for, and Tempestus as well are disgusting now. Sorry.
Yeah. And the Corvus Black Star is very strong flyer. Yeah. I think flyers are so much stronger in this edition, and the Corvus Black Star is pretty strong.
I would say like 2/3 of the units from 7th edition to 8th got better, and the last third maybe either stayed the same, got slightly worse. Like there's a few units that suck. Like Riptides got much worse, Swooping Hawks got much worse, but if you went through the whole book, there's very little things that got significantly worse, and the balance of power is much more in the middle from what I can tell right now in the current meta. Now, I have a few lists that I can't really talk about because of ETC that I feel like have broken and abused some of the rules and are disgusting.
Yes.
So, in a few months when these lists get out there, they could be the new like top tier, and then nothing else can compete in the middle tier. But I think for right now everything won. Not everything, but a lot of things won. So with that, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, Darren.
Yep.
For feedback, you can email canhammer.podcast@gmail.com. You go to canhammer.ca for more information about us. You can go to youtube.com/canhammer for all of our video goodness. And you can, if you want to support the show, you can support us at patreon.com/canhammer. Thanks, guys, and have a good one.
Thank you.